Okay, today I'm going to talk about something that's actually a very big subject, and it's about our personal energy field, the prana that we have around us and animals and all life, and the living energy. A lot of people know about this, um, and there's a lot of books about prana and talking about different chakras and all that kind of stuff. And it's actually a very big subject. And I could talk about this for a very, very long time, and I'm going to say stuff that people will say, well, how does he know that or whatever. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to have examples and activities and exercises that allows people to understand and feel something for themselves. That way it isn't a matter of my opinion, but it's something that you can actually confirm. And intuitively, we all know a lot of this stuff. But as you might have heard, all atoms have some kind of electrical nature. There's electrons and photons and positrons and so on. Now, protons. Now, since the building blocks of human life and our cells and everything has to do with atoms, and they're electronic and they have positive, negatives, and they have ions. Ultimately, we are basically a conglomeration of a whole bunch of different energy fields that constitute the vehicle that we are in. And a lot of people write about this, and they talk about the chakras, and you got the head, this chakra, and then, the throat, and all that, and then you have in your hands, and so on. Now, it can be very confusing, and it can sound like a lot of bizarro stuff. But essentially, there are some very simple things that any person can do to recognize, first of all, that we basically live in an electrical field. And that electrical field is very complicated. Just like our body has bones, water, various kinds of tissues and organs and glands. The electrical field that's around, that is basically the electrical field is sort of electricity that is actually giving us life. It's a vehicle for our life, the functions that we have, the things that we do, our nerves, our brain, and so on. And if we look at nature in the atmosphere and in plants and in people, there's detection of magnetism and electricity, static electricity, and so on. Now, I've made a little drawing here that is fairly funny and basic, but basically I'm trying to illustrate a little bit about how we can take a different view of what we see every day: trees, clouds, air, our bodies, dogs, cats, animals, and realize that there's a lot more to what we're looking at than what we see with our eyes. And that's why we have to learn how to see with a different kind of a vision. And it's not more of a seeing, it's more of a feeling. Because we have an electrical field around us. And that electrical field performs a whole lot of functions. It draws in energy from outside, for example. It disperses energy from things that accumulate in us go out. So there's been a long tradition in many types of teachings that say that, look, you can use this potential here, electrical potential, in this very sophisticated system that's of energy fields that we have around us, to interact with life, with animals, with the ground, with the earth, and to actually feel and literally feel in communion with all the different electrical fields and so on that are around us. Now, this is a very, very vast subject. and it's simplified very too much almost in a lot of books. The best way to really understand and study this type of subject is to have your own sense of feeling and understand it on a daily basis, not just by a book. Because the interaction of our electrical fields has a role to play in our relationships with other human beings, with animals, with our environment. Example of feng shui, setting up systems in our environment, use the properties through water and plants and so on. Now, I'm going to be able to talk about this for anyone who's interested at quite length, but one thing I want to mention is that because you think about this environment around us as like an antenna, and it can broadcast and it can also receive. And this actually our aura, our presence that we have in the electrical field is extremely, extremely powerful and just totally amazing. And I can explain that. But one thing that we can do is we can, through practice of meditation, create a field around us that actually helps deflect negative and chaotic waves that are coming toward us throughout the environment, such as radio waves and magnetic and spurious signals of different kinds. And we can bring that in, have it dissipate, and ground it out. Now, one of the ways that's why nature is very important, because we can ground it out to the ground, to a tree, to an animal. Being out in nature is very healthy because of that grounding effect. Now, artificial electromagnetic fields are produced by household currents and cell phones and that sort of thing. All those types of influences have a deleterious effect on our body, because the physical form that we have, that little shape that we have in the center, the hard matter, is not even that hard, but we have bones, we have flesh, we have water. We have a whole water system in our body, by the way, and that's electrical. All of that has supporting energy fields around it. You see? And those fields can be used and harmonized through a process of resonance and meditation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue on in some of the other segments, because this is a really, really big subject, and I have some exercises that people can do that help our health and help healing. And when we're under different kinds of stress, there's ways, the very simple mechanisms that we can use to bring ourselves into a center in the use of sound and that sort of thing. So this is a very fascinating subject, and for those who are interested, continue and listen on to the rest of the series.